By design, these relationships detach you from your sense of self. And it happens so gradually that you barely even notice. The worst of it is that we end up taking on blame and shame for all these changes. And in this video, I hope to change that for you, because none of this is your fault. So first, let's talk about that ever important loss of self-identity. And I say this all the time, but I really believe that this is one of the worst things that a person can do to another human being, is detach them from their sense of self, from the sense of who they are. And this happens gradually, but it happens in every relationship with a narcissist. The only exceptions are when people see the narcissist for who they are and get out of the relationship before things progress too far. And that's why I put out so many videos about recognizing narcissism, because when you know what to look for, it's a whole lot easier to spot early on. And trust me, I know firsthand the dangers of losing yourself in a relationship. So how exactly do you lose touch with yourself? Well, there are a lot of ways, and you're going to notice as we go through this list that a lot of the things that we're about to touch on also are ways that you lose touch with your sense of self. But right now I want to point out how you stop losing interest in things that used to be really important to you. And this can easily happen as you start seeing more and more contempt from the narcissist, basically just for you being you. So there you are, just being yourself and doing the things that you naturally love to do. And you can tell that that really irritates the other person. And maybe they even go so far as to tell you that it irritates them, or maybe they'll make fun of it. They might make you feel guilty for spending time on things that are just purely to make you happy. But if you think about it, what is this life for if not to have a little bit of enjoyment? Yes, relationships are important. We do have responsibilities. But if you're not doing anything to make yourself happy, to feed your own soul, then what are we doing here? And so whenever you notice that someone is putting down your interests, they're trying to extinguish your flame, that is a major red flag and not somebody you need close to you. So now let's look at some great advice on this topic from the comment section. The best thing to do is keep yourself occupied with hobbies or people or something you love. Your focus on that over time will make you realize there is a lot more to life than giving them energy. And this is great advice for anyone, but it's especially helpful for people who are still in relationships like these, because it can put a wedge between the narcissist and your sense of self. The more you connect with that sense of self, the less likely you are to lose it. So it's incredibly crucial to keep up those things that make you you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Christina, and I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. This channel is dedicated to helping you recognize and overcome the effects of emotional abuse. And if these topics have touched your life, consider subscribing, because there's a whole lot more helpful content for you right here. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is, again, super important, and that is a diminished sense of self-worth. So how you feel about yourself, your opinion of yourself, really takes a nosedive when you're in these relationships. And as much as you want to protect yourself and shield yourself from that external criticism that's coming your way, or the daggers that somebody's shooting with their eyes at you, these things can tend to get to you over time, especially if this is the one person you're spending the most time with. And we really have to be careful here, because so often most of us have the tendency to say everything's fine. I see this person for who they are and I don't let them bother me. But be very careful about brushing things off too quickly. Take a really good look at how you're feeling in this relationship and how you're feeling about yourself as a result of the relationship. Please be brutally honest with yourself. Self-worth is something that we take responsibility for, so it might not feel natural to blame someone else for your opinion of yourself. But this here, what I'm talking about now, it's not about blame, it's about evaluation. Because when you're around people who are making you feel bad, yes, you can take responsibility for that, and the responsibility that you can take is separating yourself from these people who are making you feel bad. Because when you start seeing yourself through the lens that the narcissist sees you through, that's when the real damage begins. So now let's look at a comment that highlights this point really well. I thought I'd found the love of my life, but having watched videos like this since he abandoned me after my dad died, nice, eh? I realized that I had to work on things like self-worth, which I'd always lacked, boundaries, never really had any, all sorts. But now I realize my value. I know I am the prize, not the man I'm with. And I bet he knows it. Haha. So I love this comment because it encapsulates that comeback moment. And if you haven't had it yet, I assure you, you will. This is the moment where you realize that you are worth so much more than this. And depending on where you're at right now, it may be a bit of a journey to get to the point where you actually start feeling that confidence and actually believe that you are the one who's important here, not the other person. But you will get there. I promise you, if you haven't had it already, your comeback moment is on the horizon. So next I'm going to try to cover what is a really big topic, but I'm going to try to break it down simply here and just cover the basics. And what we want to talk about now is emotional detachment. So in relationships with narcissists, it's very common to lose touch with not just who you are, but what you're feeling. And there are a lot of ways that this can happen. And the ways that I'm going to talk about here today have a lot to do with the trauma bond. So when you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you're enduring the worst of it, they're in your face, maybe screaming, or maybe it's the silent treatment and it's just having an intense effect on you. There's a defense mechanism that some people have that allows them to emotionally detach so that you're not feeling the full brunt of the abuse. But then something similar happens in the good moments, because when things are good, you choose to focus only on the good. There's this strong sense of relief as those feel-good chemicals rush in when you finally feel like things are okay. And even in those good moments, you can probably remember thinking that this probably isn't going to last, but I'm going to enjoy it while it's here. And that can keep you stuck in the trauma bond, because when things are truly bad, it's possible that there may be some emotional detachment going on there. And when things are good, it feels like everything is right and there's this strong pull to focus only on the good. And so we're not necessarily seeing things for exactly what they are all the time. But really understanding how this all works can help you overcome it. Because once you can start to train yourself to see the whole person and to see the whole relationship all the time for what it is, the hold that that trauma bond has on you weakens little by little. So the next thing I want to talk about here today is isolation. And it's probably not what you think. Yes, a narcissist can isolate you from friends and family. That's definitely a component of it. But this video is about how narcissistic abuse changes you. So what we're talking about now is how you might choose to isolate for various reasons as a result of a relationship with a narcissist. And you may choose to isolate because you feel like something's wrong with you. After years of gaslighting and abuse, it's only natural to start taking that stuff personally. So you might think that your presence would have a negative effect on other people, or that other people might see you and treat you the way the narcissist does. So you might fear that just by being yourself that you're going to get ridiculed and ostracized. You may also have trouble trusting people, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But if you do have trouble trusting people, you might isolate yourself because you're afraid of getting hurt and you're trying to protect yourself. And while that's understandable, it's not healthy for you in the long term. So now let's look at a comment from someone who has experienced this firsthand. I isolated myself from friends and family because I felt like there was something wrong with me for hiding her toxic behavior from everybody. So yes, now let's get to those trust issues. Trust issues are incredibly common. It's almost a given after a relationship with a narcissist because you end up feeling so duped. You end up feeling like you fell for a bait and switch. And this is something that I've experienced firsthand, and I hear it all the time from my coaching clients, that this wasn't something that would happen to me. We all think we're reasonably intelligent and we think that we wouldn't fall for something like this because we think it would be obvious. And the problem is that there is really a lack of education about this until you get into it and start falling down that rabbit hole. But that feeling you get on the other side, and the part that's really dangerous, is that you feel like you can't really trust yourself. You can't trust your own judgment if you fell into something like this. If you believed the lies and manipulation that you did for however long, it does become very difficult to trust yourself. And this is where connection really makes a difference. When you start learning about narcissism and hearing other people's stories, you understand that it's not your fault. Because truly, if you had all that information in your hands before you met this person, you would have seen the red flags and you would have walked. At the very least, you probably would have proceeded with some level of caution. So on the other side, trust issues are understandable. And yes, you should not trust the person who was manipulative to you, and you should not trust the person who lied to your face. But you should start to work on trusting yourself again, because you are worthy of trust, especially in trusting yourself. On the other side, you're not exactly the same person that you were before. So start looking for examples in your everyday life of reasons that you should be able to trust yourself, and you will find them. And here's a comment from someone who has been through this, and it really highlights what it feels like to be on the other side. If only I had found you sooner and learned all this after I was discarded by who I thought was the love of my life, I could have saved myself 21 years of isolation, devastating loneliness, and depression. He broke my heart, spirit, faith in relationships, and trust in men. Thank you so much. And now after this comment, I have to do a little preemptive strike, because I guarantee you, if I do not, and maybe even if I do, I will get comments about how women can be narcissists too. And yes, that is true, but it does not take away from the experience that women have had with male narcissists. On this channel, I try to keep it neutral, and that means sharing both experiences. Now I want to talk about one way that narcissists change you that is so incredibly common, and it's really essentially just a byproduct of abuse, and that is heightened anxiety. When you have to walk around on eggshells all the time just to keep the peace, you're going to have some level of anxiety. When you have to think about what you say, because what you say might make someone else explode, it's going to give you anxiety. Now remember, one thing that is always consistent in a relationship with a narcissist is that intermittent reinforcement. And when we talk about intermittent reinforcement, the reinforcement part is the good part, but then there's the other side, that's the bad. And we can think of this like the Jekyll and Hyde personality. So when it's good, it might be really good, or it might just be okay. And then when it's bad, it's unpredictable. And it can really attack your sense of emotional safety, especially when you feel like you're walking a tightrope between the two. Now let's look at a comment from someone who really understands this well. So I'm in a relationship, it's been 3.5 years, but from the last year, I'm struggling with it all. She changed her personality suddenly, and I lost all my mental health. And even though I still love her so much, it hurts me. I get panic attacks when I get silent treatment for small things. And because when I was going through the comments, the term panic attack came up quite a bit. So I want to share another comment from one of you who has experienced this. I was triggered into panic attacks by his treatment and cheating. I went to the hospital twice by myself. Once they said it was panic, and he knew it was him. He stopped caring for me, would sit in the other room happily playing with our child. I told him all I wanted was for him to sit with me. He said, "This is your problem." That comment is a little bit painful to read because it really highlights that lack of empathy. You would think or hope that somebody who cared about you, regardless of what kind of problem you're having, would be there for you. But more than that, if you literally tell them under no uncertain terms that you need them in that moment and they shut you out for no reason, it's something that's really hard to understand unless you've been in a relationship with someone like this. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the hypervigilance that comes as a result of being in a relationship with a narcissist. So you're constantly on guard. And this is very much related to the anxiety we just talked about. Not only are you watching the things that you say, but you might do things to make sure that this narcissistic partner or parent is in a good mood. You might change all of your behavior just to become not what will make them happy, because there is no making a narcissist happy, but to become some version of something that might possibly keep them from having these emotional outbursts or shutting down. So now let's look at a comment that illustrates what it feels like in this place. Even when there were weeks and months of good times, in the back of my mind, I just knew the other shoe was going to drop, and it always did. It's unfortunate because this individual really seemed like the perfect fit for me. And the last part of that comment I think is going to be very relatable to a lot of you, because you do get this sense that if only, right? If only they would stop lying. If only they just wouldn't cheat. If only they would just stop devaluing and discarding, then you would live happily ever after. So basically, if only they would stop being a narcissist, you'd be okay. And this is a common sentiment because there are things that brought you into this relationship with this specific person. It is not all bad. And this is a good thing to remind yourself if you're struggling with trusting yourself. We end up beating ourselves up because we think the lies and manipulation would have or should have been obvious. But there's also the good times, and there's the connection that you think you have with this person. There are things on the other end that can distort your view of the entire relationship. And that's when you end up feeling, if they would just only stop being a narcissist, things will be great. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is what happens as a result of all that anxiety and hypervigilance. And that is we become people pleasers. And you can be a people pleaser on many different levels. Some people have extreme people pleasing tendencies, and for others, it's triggered by things like conflict. So if you sense that someone's going to get upset, you may completely just fawn and let them have their way. But either way, it's almost like a catch-22 because it's there because of narcissism, and a narcissist will fully take advantage of that. It's funny how that works, isn't it? It's almost like they're training you to become the type of person that's convenient for them. And here's a very insightful comment from one of you guys on people pleasing. People pleasers set themselves up to be hurt because narcissists quickly learn that they can hurt people pleasers passive aggressively simply by not being pleased. And that comment really highlights why it's so dangerous for people pleasers to get into relationships with narcissists, because we know that narcissists are never happy. And if all you really need is to be able to make someone else happy, it's like you're entering into a contract you can never fulfill. So another way that narcissists change you is that you kind of become trained to set your boundaries aside. You may be made to feel guilty for having boundaries, like you're somehow attacking someone else. And this becomes a really big problem again when you're exposed to narcissistic people as a child, because that's when you should be learning to set healthy boundaries. But the good news is that you can, at any time, at any age, it doesn't matter, it's never too late, you can learn to set healthy boundaries. And more good news, the ability to do that will naturally repel abusive people. Now here's a comment I know you're going to relate to. I was starting to think I was the all the time because every day I was trying to put boundaries in and came off naggy, I guess. Yeah, so when you try to set boundaries with a narcissist, the way they respond is never going to be positive. So they might call you a nag, they might attack, or they might play the victim. There are all kinds of ways that narcissists react to boundaries, and none of them are good. And the next way that a narcissist changes you has a lot to do with the gaslighting that you endure in these relationships. And the way that you change is that you begin to doubt yourself more often. And this is very similar to what we already talked about with trusting yourself. But in this one, we're going to dig a little bit deeper because it's not just about trusting yourself to choose a partner or a friend or people in your life. It's about trusting your ability to make decisions or to really do anything. When you're in relationships with narcissists, they're constantly criticizing you or telling you that you should have done things a different way, playing devil's advocate. So every time you make a decision, they plant that little seed of doubt that maybe you should have gone in the complete opposite direction. And even if there's something that you think they will be proud of you for, they find a reason to pick it apart. And so their voice becomes the voice in your head. Your inner critic takes that voice on and it continues throwing it back at you long after the narcissist is out of your life. And this is a lot of the work that I do through coaching, is to start reprogramming that inner voice to be able to do things like get your trust back, stop all that constant self-doubt and self-criticism, and ultimately just get back to yourself. So in a nutshell, these relationships very much cause us to separate from who we truly are. And that is, again, the most damaging thing that anyone can do to another person. And one of the reasons why we end up feeling so stupid and angry and we end up blaming ourselves is because it feels like a form of self-betrayal. And if that resonates with you, you're definitely going to want to watch the video that pops up on the screen now. But before you go, if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button on your way out. And I'll see you next time.